Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor. And, well, it's time. We're here. It's August. It's like the ramp up of the club season, and we're only a month away from the series starting. It's kind of crazy. The U.S. Open coming up this weekend. And Keith, you know, we get to see some action and some live streams. We'll be streaming live from Blaine, Minnesota, just north of Minneapolis. And
no asterisk. We're just filming this weekend. No, we don't have to field those tweets from every time that we film and don't stream.
That's right. And, you know, unfortunately, it will only be the men's division this weekend. No mixed or women's divisions at the U.S. Open. YCC will be streaming on Monday, so you can catch the semis and the finals from YCCs on Monday. Our revised schedule, by the time this podcast goes up, should be up. And I think we got to start there, Keith. We're all excited for the U.S. Open, but we got a whole schedule. We had a whole streaming and a filming plan, and then it all got torn up, and we had to start from scratch because there was a lot of questions from teams about the schedule. People were pretty upset. Some of the teams kind of in that bubble range were upset about the way that the format shook out. Let's go through this, Keith. Do you want to take us through, or should I take us through?
Oh, please guide us through this journey, because there was a lot. This is quite a kerfuffle.
So initially, there were 3 power pools for the top 9 seeds. So three team power pools, which basically, you know, put the top teams in the tournament all into one pool. And that's kind of your typical names, club championships, qualifiers. Because after Chain Lightning, the 9 seed, the tournament drops off a little bit in terms of competitiveness. Not necessarily a ton, but like by the time you get to the bottom, you're looking at some teams that, you know, may not even go to regionals. So just, you know, there's a big disparity, particularly compared to a normal U.S. Open, between the top teams, who are Sockeye, Machine, Pony, and the bottom teams. The same thing we saw at Pro Elite Challenge, where they also, by the way, had a power pool. But what it meant was that there were teams in the lower pools who were in a situation where they had to outright win their pool in order to have an opportunity to get into the bracket. And the way they set up the pools, it was more like a mini bracket. It wasn't traditional pool play. So you'd play a game, and if you lost that one game, you would be eliminated from having a chance to get into the bracket, because you had to go win your first game, and then the winners played each other, and then sort of the champion of the mini bracket would then go on and play in a pre-quarter. Initially, captain of Emerald City Ultimate, formerly Voodoo out of Seattle, Zach Smith, went on Twitter and, you know, was very critical of the decision making, like emailed the people at USA Ultimate, and, you know, really just made a lot of noise about this and was very upset because, as you won't be surprised to learn, Emerald City was not in one of the power pools. So initially, USA Ultimate said, "Thank you for your feedback, but this is what we're going to stick with." And somehow between then and now, the decision was made to actually tear it up and start again. So it's unclear at this point, like, what actually happened, because there was a push from some folks, including Zach Smith, to get other teams involved in saying, hey, this is an unfair format. Because it's 20 teams. They could have just made 4 or 5 team pools and then, you know, had the top 2 teams from each pool qualify for quarterfinals, something that you might see at the college championships, for example.
Yeah, not exactly an unwieldy number.
No. And by the way, this is a 2-day tournament this year, not 3. So that's at least something to keep in mind. The revised schedule still has power pools, but they have expanded pre-quarters to include, you know, every team basically. There are now 4 power pools for seeds 1 through 12. 3-team pools, and then 2 4-team pools for seeds 13 to 20. And in those pools, you have to finish top 2. The other pools, all of the teams will get in. So you end up with a big set of pre-quarters, and then that gets played on Saturday afternoon. So now teams like Emerald City will get their shot against the top, some of the top level teams at the tournament without having to win their little mini bracket in order to get that opportunity. So Emerald City, for example, will play Machine and Condors in pool play and then go on into the bracket. So that is where things stand in the new schedule, which, of course, we'll dig into in a moment. But before we get to that, what do you make of the initial format, Keith, and then the resistance to changing it from USA Ultimate? And then they decide, no, we're actually going to change it. And as of Tuesday night, they still had not yet publicly released. We're recording at 5:30 p.m. They hadn't released the new formats, but, make sense of this for us.
Well, how can you not look at this situation and feel like it's the Triple Crown Tour in a bottle, right? Like this is, if you were going to your school science fair and you were going to make a model of the Triple Crown Tour, like this is what your diorama would look like, right? It's like, this is it. USA Ultimate wants to give the elite teams chances to play against each other, to be able to highlight those teams, for the live streams to include those teams, to satisfy the elite top level players and to insulate them. That's what the Triple Crown Tour does. And that's what the format did. And then it gave the other teams a chance to crab in a bucket their way out into a chance to play in the top end bracket, really through the meat grinder, So I can see why the lower level teams were upset. What I don't know is why they were surprised. To be fair, I don't know what the pitch was for any of these teams. If you're one of the elite teams, are you a little bothered now that suddenly your schedule's been upended for something that you didn't really have anything to do with? Where they pitched, this tournament is typically just these top level teams, right? Now, we've had plenty of ICCs where international competition comes over who isn't really to the level, right? We've seen that in some cases. So for them, I don't think this is too beyond the pale for what these elite teams have experienced in years past. They're still going to have some games that, and who knows? Black Market 1 may come out here and show us wrong. We've been wrong before. Where's Freaks at? Holler at your boys, Freaks. Remember we were like, Freaks is going to the U.S. Open, and they're going to get killed. And they went out and beat Machine and have never let us hear about it. I feel like I get mailed I have like a quilt that someone from Freaks made that has the score of the Machine game. That's not a true story. That's fake. But
that
it feels like that. If someone from Freaks, make me a quilt, please. I'll display it proudly. But we made the Freaks call and we were wrong. So like, it could happen. No one's saying that these teams can't win. It was a pretty rough format. I haven't really seen almost anybody defend the format. Now, maybe that's because you're opening yourself up to being public enemy number one. But from what I've seen, most people, even people who don't really care about the competitive equity here, feel like the format left something to be desired. It's still a little wonky when you look at it now. You look at what's going on in Pool E and Pool F. It's still weird as heck. So, we haven't arrived at a perfect solution. But I wonder how much this.
What's the perfect solution? We have to watch Mallard 2 play sockeye and pool play and lose 15-2.
We sure do.
Like, sorry. I don't think that's optimal for anybody. I'm sure the Mallard 2 guys would be happy to go out there and play against sockeye. I mean, I've been on the teams that go out and play against the top level teams, but normally that happens at regionals. This is not. You're not guaranteed to get games against the defending national champion just because you show up to the tournament when in a weird year where there's no requirements. So I don't really have a problem with them choosing a power pool format that allows the top teams to actually get high quality games, because otherwise what's going to happen is, especially the teams over in like Pool D, there's going to be 2 good teams and 3 not that good teams. And that's just frustrating for those teams to come all that way to play against teams that are not at their level, right? So power pools makes it so that more teams power match with each other, and that, sure, the 13 to 20 seeds having to be isolated in their own pools, maybe they're not happy about that. But the fact is, if you can't finish top 2 in that pool, then you don't deserve to play against a sockeye. So you want to play sockeye? Go win your games and then play. So I will say, I feel like I'm the establishment now, and like I am not going to defend the format. Here's what I'll say. Clearly the teams, or at least some of the teams, were unaware that the format was going to, effectively not put them in a situation where they may not get good games. Because let's remember, the original format had Emerald City and Flash Flood playing each other in round 1. And the loser of that game was eliminated from contention and would not get a good game against one of the top teams, which of course is part of the reason I'm sure that they wanted to come to the tournament. So, and it's like, that's actually kind of an exciting game. We had it on our film list because Emerald City, one of the better, tier 2 city teams in the country out of Seattle, and Flash Flood, picking up a lot of big names, Gabe Hernandez, Ben Banyas, and, a bunch of folks from Texas. Like, that was going to be they're going to be a good team. So that was going to be an exciting game. And you could see that game going either way and the loser feeling like they really got screwed. So I don't love that element, especially because it seems like teams were not aware that that's what it was going to be. And on the other hand, go ahead.
It's incredibly unforgiving, and almost none of these teams have played. So right. when you have like a situation like that where you can be eliminated with one loss, seeding becomes exceedingly important, and you have no basis for which to make the seeds.
And the seeds weren't good because Emerald City versus Flash Flood in round 1 didn't make sense.
That format, that particularly, that element in particular, I think was egregious, and I understand why teams were upset by it.
But what I will say is that I am in favor of power pooling good teams together more in situations where you have a big disparity between teams at the top and teams at the bottom at a tournament. Right? This is not typical YCC with 12 teams who are pretty much top to bottom very good, and you can just sort of have normal pool play, and you also have 3 days for competition. So here they only have 2 days. They have more teams. If you're going to have big pools, and so you're not going to be able to have as many games because you're going to have to play all those pool play games, including one of those games probably on Sunday morning, and then maybe go straight to semis. And nobody really wants that. So doing power pools makes sense, but I think you have to give teams an opportunity not to be eliminated on day 1. That's not a format that's really ever used or approved by USA Ultimate in any situation. If it's one bid regionals, they don't do straight bracket to determine who's going to go to the national championships. They use pool play because you don't want to create a situation where a team is not able to qualify to the national championships, in a single loss on day 1. So I don't love that element of it. But on the other hand, I do think that we have to get away from the idea that everything has to be entirely egalitarian at these tournaments. Like, I thought it made a lot of sense at Pro Elite, for example, to put the 4 nationals teams together in one pool and let them play against each other. And then the other teams get to have good, balanced competition on day 1. And if they play well, have an opportunity to play up against one of those top teams. That's exactly how it should work in my mind. There's nothing saying that everybody deserves to have an opportunity to play those top teams.
It's wild how much power those top teams wield now. I mean, like, USA Ultimate, like, let's say USA Ultimate does do the egalitarian thing. Are those top teams going to keep going?
Oh, that's
Why
what
would
I'm
you
saying.
Travel like for that?
You're better off having a practice weekend.
Right. Or like if they wanted that, they could just do it at a local tournament that took them a lot less time and money to put together. Right. They could get a chance to play teams in their area. So I get why USA Ultimate feels like they have to create something that's appealing to those top level teams in order to have them in the same place, which makes it easier to market them. But so there's a lot of control, I guess, kind of put in the hands of those top level teams because they're good, right? They're a commodity in some ways to USA Ultimate. I imagine that the reason the field is expanding here is in part because USA Ultimate needs to get a little juice going. So, I mean, if that's the case, you have to be, acquiesce to the teams that
and you have to communicate with them.
Are low level. Yeah, and the communication,
how many times do we
saying
have to
we're
say
not going to do this and then going back on it made everything so much worse. If they could have just been like, we're sorry, here's a new tournament.
You have to tear up the format and post a new one, just a couple days before the event. It's like this could have all been avoided had this gone out as draft and people were like well aware of this in advance, as opposed to it just getting posted and then people getting really upset. You wouldn't have been in this situation in the first place. It
could have happened privately, right? This all could have happened in email listservs rather than on Twitter, which is bad. It's bad for everybody involved, I feel like. But except for the teams, because the teams got what they needed out of it. They made this change. I got to say, Charlie, I'm a little disappointed. I think it was Scott Dunham, one of the Ulti-World contributors, famously Hallie's dad, who brought this up. But like, is this not the time to experiment with some cool new formats? Like,
100%.
We've pitched Swiss Draw before. We have no basis for really knowing what teams are good besides our inclinations and their past performances. I mean, chances are Sockeye and Pony and Machine are going to be the best teams there. That's probably accurate, but we don't really know that, right? Anything can happen, any given Sunday kind of deal. Why not Swiss Draw? Like, let's break up the Swiss Draw. Let's break up the preordained matchups that they use at Florida warm-up, right? Like, that way you can play up. Guarantee Emerald City gets their shot at Machine or whatever, but also guarantee the Machine mostly gets games against other national levels teams. Like, this was a chance to mess around with some new stuff, run the algorithm, do the preordained matchups thing. Like, this was a chance to try do new stuff, and I think people would have been open to it because this is a U.S. Open unlike any one that we've had before.
What can I say? I totally agree. Swiss Draw would have been sweet. Like, you handpicking your matchups could have been sweet too, a la Florida warm up. Have teams play 5 games, then you do like a point diff thing, or you run the ranking algorithm, and then the top 4 teams go to semis. That would be fun. I'd love to see that. Instead, we get this really very, I think you can see the thought that was put into the way the format was put together. They were trying to balance multiple things. I get it, but it ends up leaving people feeling frustrated. And then, now some of the elite teams probably feel frustrated because they were in this great, power pool, and now they have a team that's, isn't at their level in the pool, and it weakens their competition, and they have to play a pre-quarter against a team that's going to get blown out. So, not everyone can win in this stretched out situation, which is why I think some of those other formats where you do power match all the way through with like a Swiss Draw, or you get to hand select games and you can put teams against each other in a more sort of thoughtful way, could have been a better situation. I agree. Anyway, enough of the format. Let's talk about the competition.
Yeah, I do. Wait, give me one last note, just in case someone tries to come at Charlie for this, because Charlie was like talking about how the USA Ultimate doesn't do like single elimination in postseason. The postseason's different because you have a bunch of performance that like puts teams into their seeds. Like it gives them, they've already had a chance to compete in order to set themselves up for success in the postseason. And that's not the case in this tournament. So it would be unreasonable to do a single elimination bracket here, even though it would be exciting. And Charlie and I have advocated that that's appropriate in some situations. This is not one of them. You may continue.
Let's talk about the competition. Again, men's division only this year, and it should be a good one. I mean, we've got some very good teams. We have 3 semifinalists from 2019 in the field, and lots of other very interesting teams, including Rhino and Chain. Like, what's Chain going to look like this year? I'm excited to see them play. Condors is going to be, I think, pretty much at full strength. Dig, and then Sub-Zero and Truck Stop. Those are your big teams outside of those top 3 in terms of Sockeye, Machine, and Pony. So, of course, Sockeye winning at the Pro Elite Challenge, looking like the best team. Do you expect to see them win again here, Keith?
Yeah. I mean, they did the thing at Pro League Challenge. I think that was the time when you would most expect them to be more flawed. They were running fairly open lines. We saw some new contributors in big spots for them. And despite, I don't even think playing like incredibly well, they went out and won. So I think that portends really well for their ability to go out and do the same thing in this situation. I also think they're in what feels like the weakest pool to me. So they're going to be set up for success from the get-go. I don't see any reason to pick against them, as chalky and uninteresting as that take may be.
Well, certainly in pool play. I mean, I think the question is going to be what happens later on. This will be our first look at Machine. Mm-hmm. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this team looks out on the field. There's some folks, like, is Joe White playing yet? Like, we haven't really seen him in the AUDL. He's been out with injury. Is he going to be in the field this weekend? He's on the roster. I'm excited to see if he gets back out there and what this Machine team looks like. They came so close in 2019. Some pieces moving around a little bit. Obviously, a good chunk of the team has had success in the AUDL with the Chicago Union, but this is the first time playing as Machine. And what do you expect to see? I mean, is this a team that you still feel like can go back to the finals of the national championships?
Absolutely. I absolutely. I mean, we talked about in our preseason, like, this is a team that's going to be loaded with talent. We've seen them get off to slow starts, though. Like, it would not surprise me to see them lose a game in pool play. It certainly wouldn't surprise me to see them play very, very close in one of these games. I mean, I think they have the toughest pool. Well, I guess Pool D is the toughest pool, but Pool B is pretty close. I mean, I think Emerald City is probably legit, and we know Condors is. So it wouldn't be surprising to see something wacky happen in Pool B. I think that's probably the most likely pool for weird things to happen, in part because Pool D has a little more expectation attached to it. Pool B and Machine is the best team, but I think that their pool is a little bit of a trap for them. Early season, don't have all the pieces together. You're still kind of figuring things out. Like, they are in a trap spot, so to speak, in part because they may be de-emphasizing their outcomes this weekend.
We know that a lot of their players are prioritizing the AUDL, but they've basically locked up a playoff spot at this point. I think maybe they've
and they're playing Detroit this week.
And they're playing Detroit this week, so I'm sure they'll have most of their players. I mean, that's not the question. I just think, where's the headspace at? I think this is for some teams. Sockeye and Pony, for example, were both at PEC and are training and taking this season very seriously, like a normal year. Other teams, that's just not the case, and they're taking the field for the very first time. I think, you got to be careful when we kind of look at the results from this weekend. You don't want to put too much emphasis. If you see a team struggle that's just playing its first tournament, that doesn't necessarily mean that much for the postseason. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. I'm very excited in Pool C. We get Pony versus Rhino, rematch of one of the best games from the 2019 National Championships in the quarterfinals, where Rhino just about pulled off the upset. And I'm so high on this Rhino team. I'm really excited to see what they can do. Leandro Marks back out there. Rafi Hayes back out there for them. So how do they stack up against Pony in the rematch?
We haven't seen a roster from Rhino yet. This is really like a debut from them, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right.
So I'm as much curious to see what the team looks like this year. We had a chance to see Pony, but this is like a big test for a Rhino team that I think has a lot of hype behind them after last club season's Nationals performance. How much has changed for them? Like we have not heard much of what's been happening over in Portland. So I think there's a lot of hype, and I could see them kind of returning to earth. I could see the regression happening for them, or I could see them building on it.
Let me give you
they're one of the most interesting stories.
Let me give you the bull case. Me. Brand new head coach this year, former Revolver coach Mike Payne takes the reins in Portland. And, you talk about somebody who's got a lot of pedigree in coaching. I mean, he won a lot of rings in his time coaching and then playing in San Francisco. I think that, having having that steady hand. Are we going to get a new revolver offense out there from Rhino? I
got to say that Rhino,
Rhino
doesn't strike me as an IHD team.
No, that's true. But
they're not giving me the IHD vibes.
It's going to be fun to see how that plays out. With a coach coming from a system like Revolver, with a very system-oriented team, to a Rhino team that seems to play a little bit faster and looser. Not to say they don't have systems, but they'll put it up, and I like that. I think there's potential for some real fireworks there and some exciting stuff. Adding a little bit more defensive structure and letting the offense kind of take care of itself the way it has in the past. Could we see regression? Sure, but we could also see players hitting their prime. Right. Rafi Hayes was unbelievable in 2019. Leandro Marks has been getting better and better and better. So I feel like this is an incredibly exciting team to watch, and we're streaming the game, so you can tune in and see it all for yourself.
Rhino chose to take Mike Payne on as a coach. It also could be a sign that there's been a culture shift. Like maybe they do want structure. Maybe they want something that's a little more in form with what they've seen from Revolver of years past. So we could very much see a new level Rhino, and maybe that means they take a step back this weekend as they're integrating so much change. But it also could mean that by the end of the year, they're reaching new heights even higher than what we saw from them in 2019.
Over in Pool D, 4, 5, and 9 seeds: Truck Stop, Sub-Zero, Chain Lightning. I think this pool finishes in reverse order, Keith.
Oh yeah,
Chain, Sub, Truck.
Is that what our power rankings have? I think that sounds about right.
That's possible. Actually,
might be Chain, Truck, Sub in our power rankings.
Obviously, Atlanta having tons of success right now in the AUDL. I think this Chain Lightning team is poised to take the next step forward. And here's a big question mark. What are lineups going to look like this weekend? Like, a lot of teams are playing in the AUDL, and then also have the club team at the US Open. So we don't, even if the rosters say one thing, we won't really know until we see the AUDL lineups come out later this week, like who's going to be where. I would expect for the most part, club teams will be focusing on the club tournament and leaving the AUDL team, to the rest of the non-club players. So we'll see. But that's if I have some hesitation to say Chain's going to win the pool, that might be it. But I'm very excited to see what this Chain Lightning team looks like, and if they can hang in there, get to semis or finals. I do think that Truck has taken a pretty clear step back when you look at their roster, and Sub-Zero is going to be solid, but I think not as good as they were in 2019. Losing Ryan Osgar alone is going to leave them hurting, but they also lose Josh Klain and a handful of others.
I got to say, I'm disappointed by all these the Truck hate out there, because all I've heard for years in the back rooms of the Ulti-World offices is how Dave Cranston is the greatest Ultimate player nobody talks about. Like, Dave Cranston is 2 players of the year rolled into one, and he's a role player, so nobody notices. He doesn't catch a lot of goals, throw a lot of assists, but that's for noobs. That's for rubes. You don't know if you don't know that Dave Cranston's so good. So, like, why is everybody selling on Truck Stop when they've got Dave Cranston? Sure, they lost Rowan. Sure, they lost Del Rico Johnson. There's no Nikki Spiva or Ted Seither or Gus Norbaum, no Joe Freund. Like, sure, Markham Schaffner's gone, but like Dave freaking Cranston,
you're on one today. I love it.
That's my Truck rant. I still think Sub finishes the bottom of this pool, though. I got Truck finish second. Give me Chain, Truck, Sub.
A lot of good young talent in DC.
We did not talk at all about Dig here.
That's true.
You got any thoughts on this? They're kind of masked in Pool A because it's like, oh, they're probably going to lose to Sockeye and beat Black Market. Like, it's not that interesting, but their roster's a bit intriguing to me. They made some. Pardon?
Let's recall they gave Sockeye a heck of a game at 2019 Nationals, almost won it, and they looked really good at Boston Invite. So
yeah, I heard Orion Cable really is the truth. I was a little skeptical that he'd be that guy in club, but I've heard nothing but good things.
let's see, right? This is the tester game. They get Sockeye. Let's see how it goes.
Orion Cable getting schooled by Matt Rader? Like, are we going to get Orion Cable versus Matt Rader in a little future versus the past?
Who says Matt Rader's going to school Orion Cable?
I know it could go the other. It could be AI crossing up MJ. You know, is that what we're talking about here?
Did you just compare Matt Rader to MJ?
Or did I compare Orion Cable to Allen Iverson?
It doesn't seem that apt. But
well, find me another famous example of
I guess your point.
Of a passing of the torch kind of moment like that.
Yeah, I mean, and who else to talk about here? I think I'm excited to see what Dig can do there. Condors had, mixed results at PEC. We'll see how they hang in there. The bottom seeds behind Chain, sort of the original power pool teams. Yogosbo, which is kind of got some pickups on it. Like, they'll be solid. It's like a good Madison team. Emerald City, of course, who should be competitive. I don't expect them to beat Machine or Condors, but I wouldn't be shocked if they got a win. And then Black Market 1, who I think is going to get rolled by Sockeye and Dig, but should be good. And then in the other pools, the top seeds are Inception and Mallard. As mentioned before, we're going to get a look at Flash Flood. Let's see if they can win that pool F and do some damage in the bracket. Lots of hype around that team coming into the U.S. Open. So, Keith, you want to make some predictions real quick?
Oh, predictions. I forgot that we had to do these. Like, I don't have that built up in the same way like I used to. Because I haven't really even looked at like where your performance is going to land you in the bracket. I'm sticking with Sockeye to win this thing.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out if Pony wins their pool, are they going to be on the other side of the bracket? They are.
Yeah, it'll be 1-4-2-3 in semis if everything goes to seed.
All right, I think I'm going to take Sockeye Pony with the thought that these are teams that already have the reps under their belt, so they're a step ahead. My sleeper though is Chain. I think it's a tough path for them because they have to probably play Sockeye in semis. I guess they could finish second in Pool D, and that would get them on the other side of the bracket. But like they could be a sleeper. If there's a team that I think we're sleeping on, they could be them.
Yeah, I'm taking Sockeye, Machine, Pony, and Chain in semis. And I think Pony's going to beat Machine in their semifinal rematch of 2019. There's got a lot of good storylines. And Sockeye, I do think will beat Chain. I'm taking Pony to win, though. I think they get the revenge game. Don't forget, Jimmy Mickle got hurt in their bracket game at PEC.
Source Jimmy Mickle.
Post interview, didn't want to talk about it on the air. Come on, man. But yeah, I do think Sockey's probably the best team on paper here. Won't be shocked if they win. I think Machine is going to be knocking the rust off a little bit, so I don't expect them to win. But yeah, Chain is a sleeper, sure. I'm taking them to semis. I don't think that's really sleeper status. I would be surprised if they won.
Can I also note that if we're going to talk about Jimmy Mickle being hurt, Dylan Freechild wasn't even there.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, Sockeye is scary. I mean, like if they absolutely dominate this weekend, I think you might as well go ahead and make your nationals pick now. Like,
yeah, we start looking at them like old Revolver. Yeah, we'll see. They definitely look like they had a very high ceiling in their performance at PEC.
They did. All right, well there you go. So you're taking Sockeye over Pony, and I'm taking Pony over Sockeye.
Yep.
Man, it's just like
old reliable.
Times. Just like old times. All right, well, those are our picks. Let us know yours at DeepLookPod, deeplook@ultiworld.com. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll come back. We're going to talk a little YCC, make our AUDL picks, and send you off into the weekend. Stay with us. Welcome back to Deep Look. Of course, the International Club Championships, I think it's called. The
real national this year.
Yeah, I don't.
Intranational. They keep ICC. It's just intranational, right?
The naming conventions are just absolutely terrible and ultimate across the board. Like, don't get
this is the top tier bad naming.
Oh, anyway, There's also the Youth Club Championships, the YCCs, and it's going to be a weird one this year. A lot of teams not making the trip for one reason or another. A lot of teams opting out many months ago because of COVID-19, and so it's a much smaller tournament than normal, and a lot of the heavy favorites in divisions are not present. But that's going to make for some exciting competition for the teams that are there, and It's been 2 years. Roster's going to look quite a bit different, and so it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. There's 14 teams in the U20 boys division. In the girls division, there are 8. Again, that's U20, and in the mixed division, there are 10. So again, these are much smaller numbers than usual, but still some good teams in the field. And so let me just run through. We'll go back from starting with mixed. Your top 4 seeds: Madison Mufa Bots, Minnesota Superior, Hypnosis out of Chicago, and the Lexington, Kentucky team, Pi Plus. And then we head over to the girls division. Your top 4 seeds: Washington, D.C. Rogue, always a very good team. Eugene Downpour, should be kind of like an Oregon mashup team. Minnesota Superior, and Texas Tango out of Austin. In the boys division, top seed Foggy Bottom Boys out of Washington, D.C., Red Hots out of Chicago, Minnesota Superior, and Trainwreck out of Independence, Oklahoma. No,
Oregon.
That's an R. Oregon. I was like, Oklahoma, what? So Oregon team there as well. So, you can see lots of the same cities sending teams. In fact, some teams pulling together their own, travel plans to go and compete without necessarily having the backing of the local disc organization. I know that happened in DC. Very interesting. So, there's been a lot of different appetite for wanting to get back out and compete, compared in some places compared to others. So you don't get to pick from the normal heavy favorites for the most part, Keith. But what are your thoughts on this YCC and who we might see excel?
I wonder if USA Ultimate is happy to have a little bit of a respite from all of the usual pitfalls that we've seen over the past couple of years with YCC, about all the conversations that come up around what their incentives are for various disc orgs and their youth organizations. This year it's mostly about let's get the kids on the field, I guess. So that's good. I'm thinking that as far as who you think is going to do well, you need to slide a big bonus to any of these Minnesota teams. Home cooking, I think, is going to be real good. There are 3 Minnesota teams in the girls division. They're sending Minnesota Superior B, and Minnesota Superior U17. So, that's a lot of lotto tickets. You know what I mean? That's a couple extra raffle balls in there for Minnesota. But I think that they're just going to be the most well supplied teams from a talent standpoint and from a support standpoint. So, that matters at these youth club championships. It's a little strange seeing some of the seeds. Some of the names that we know have done well in the past are not necessarily near the top of the seeding. I don't know if that's a roster thing. They're asking for feedback from teams saying hey, what does your roster look like this year compared to typical years? But in mixed, I'm supporter of Pi Plus. We've seen them do well in many years past. They can do well without necessarily a giant roster. They always have a good top end talent. So I think that's going to be helpful in this kind of tournament. I like them. And then you get that Madison-Minnesota rivalry at the top. I guess, I think I got to take the Minnesota teams, though. So I'm going to take Minnesota over Madison there with Pi in the mix. That to me may be the most interesting of the 3 divisions. What do you think?
Well, yeah, especially, you see an Atlanta team in there. Surprised you didn't talk about them. Sending teams in the boys and girls divisions, so they could be very competitive.
Good eye.
And again, I don't really know what to make of the seeding, and it's notoriously difficult to make a lot of prognostications about the youth division in general, especially after 2 years off. But knowing what we know about Atlanta's talent pipeline, I wouldn't be surprised to see them outperform. In the girls division, I do think DC Rogue has to be seen as the favorite. I won't be shocked if Oregon wins, though. Oregon has had some very good girls teams in the high school divisions over the last couple of years, and they've performed well when they've sent teams out to the high school national invite. And I think that some of that talent could be coalescing into a very good team there. Of course, though, Rogue has had a lot of historic success. I think that helps a lot. Could Minnesota be strong there again? Sure. I wouldn't be surprised. And in the boys division, I mean, I feel like Foggy Bottom Boys is like pretty clearly the heavy favorite here.
I agree with that. I think that the Foggy Bottom Boys have to be maybe a big step ahead of almost anyone else. Like, I think that, it depends on what the talent looks like for Charlotte, but I think that they could be a solid team. We've seen success for places like programs like Flying Pig. Obviously Utah can be a bit scary. Those are teams that I'm looking at. Maybe I was wrong. What if Minnesota spread too thin? I don't know. They have teams in every division. Now I'm seeing it. Yeah, they have teams everywhere. So maybe the talent's a little too distributed.
I think they're doing such awesome stuff in Minnesota with all their youth teams. I think it's very deserving that they get to host YCC every year because they're doing great things. I mean, they may not have the same kind of like legacy success of your Bostons, your North Carolinas, your Seattles, but I think that they're going to get there. A lot of very good high school programs in the area, growing all the time. So, yeah, I guess that's my picks. If I have to pick my winners right there, I'm taking DC in girls. I'm taking DC in boys. And I'm going to go... Who do I want to take in mixed? I think I'm going to take Atlanta. Maybe that's crazy.
I'm taking the same in boys and girls, so it's really going to come down to mixed.
I feel like I should trust the seeding a little bit more.
I just don't know how they're doing.
Give me Lexington. Give me Lexington.
Dang. All right, if you're taking pie, I'm taking Minnesota in mixed.
Okay, there it is.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous to bet against the Moofbots, I think, but I'll take them. I'll take DC and the other cities.
Lots of strong players in Wisconsin, and they're just sending the one team. So
they actually do have a boys team, and they do have a boys team. So they're very low seeded.
I missed that. You're right. There they are. Moofbots, 11th seed.
But that leads me to I gotta think that they took feedback for the seeding. So I'm guessing they let teams kind of like say, hey, we think we're going to be better or worse this year. I don't know. That's just a guess, a hunch.
Well, it should be fun. Competition starts Saturday, 3-day tournament. Semis and finals some select semis and finals will be streamed live on Ultiworld. We'll have film of all three finals. We'll be doing some cut-ins as well if there's close game happening on our filming field. So definitely tune in to ultiworld.com/live to follow all of the action. So that brings us to our AUDL picks for the week. Quick recap of the previous week. Chicago going in, getting the win over Madison, pretty much locking it up in the Midwest. It's going to be Madison. It's going to be Chicago and Minnesota. Still figure out who is going to host the playoff game. And San Diego in very good position now out in the West, and a big game coming up this weekend between Dallas and Austin to pretty much decide who is going to go to the playoffs in that second spot. Things continue to be a bit murky in the Atlantic, but we've got a pretty clear split between the top four and the bottom four, and a big, highly anticipated game this week between Raleigh and New York. Raleigh hasn't played a good team in like a month and a half.
But they've looked really good against everybody else.
Very good. They have a 2-game road trip against Boston and New York. So we've got 3 games to pick from, Keith. Let's dive in. Raleigh versus New York in New York. Second game of a back-to-back for Raleigh. And all of these lines coming from DraftKings. It's New York 2-point favorites at home hosting Raleigh.
So that's basically, I feel like, an implication that they're a coin flip on a neutral field. I don't know exactly what home field advantage is worth in the AUDL, but like -2 feels like about where you'd put it. But we know that Pony is playing at the tournament this weekend. I think this could be a theme for our picks. I mean, I to be honest, I think Raleigh could straight up be the better team. I was high on them coming into the year. Sure, I was disappointed with the way the year started, but I was very high on Raleigh to start the year. And now they're starting to round into form. New York has not really, I think, been the team that we thought they would. You can make excuses for that if you want, but I feel like they've really underperformed. Raleigh's been hot. I think I got to take Raleigh here. I know last week was overdogs, baby. All the favorites won. They didn't all beat the spread, but all the favorites won. So it's a little dicey to take Raleigh plus the points, but I think they could be the better team, and that makes me want to take them with the points.
Yeah, I worry a little bit about the back-to-back, but then again, they're playing Boston, and Boston's going to be missing a lot of players to dig. That is not going to be a competitive team on the field for Boston. If you're a gambler, I would maybe consider putting a little sprinkle, maybe more than a sprinkle, on Raleigh in that game. I think they're 4-point favorites against Boston because of just the lineups. So I agree with you. I expected this game to be closer to a pick'em. To see Raleigh getting points in a situation where New York may be missing a couple of players to Pony, and not a ton of crossover there, but enough that it could affect their lineups. Does New York have the defense to keep up with Raleigh's offense? I'm not sure. I think New York's defense has been a little exposed in a few games against good teams this year. So I think Raleigh is the right pick here, Keith, and I want to take them as well, +2.
All right, on to the next one then. We've got Austin visiting Dallas, and Dallas at home with the 1.5-point favorite. So a very tight line for two teams that have played a lot of really close games against each other. What say you, Charlie?
I mean, I just want to keep throwing my money away betting on Dallas. I really do. I don't. Austin has been the better team in this matchup. There's just no way around it. It's just a fact. Dallas has not looked convincing at all. But I still want to pick them here. I would feel better if it was just a straight pick 'em, but I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm overthinking it. Like, Austin has been the better team, but I feel like we saw Dallas against San Jose show us that, like, okay, when push comes to shove, they're still good. And so I want to take them here as well. What do you think?
I'm the other way here. I've spent way too much time doubting Austin. I feel like I need to pick them. Although I feel like I used that logic last time and it didn't work out. Austin also, one of the most impressive results of the weekend last week, well, they won 25-15 over San Jose. So that same team that Dallas proved themselves against, they went out and crushed. So that's an impressive result. I feel like Austin's playing well. And you know what, Charlie? Who's been probably the most important person for Dallas in this resurgence that we've seen from them?
I mean, Kyle Henke.
Well, he's out now. So who's?
Well, right. I thought that was the implication.
Who's the next guy? Who's stepped up in a big absence?
Gabe Hernandez.
Gabe Hernandez. What club team does Gabe Hernandez play for, Charlie? Flash Flood. What's Flash Flood doing this weekend, Charlie?
Playing at the U.S. Open, Keith.
Oh no, I don't know. Gabe could skip out on the weekend. It's totally possible. There are a couple other there are a couple other Roughnecks players on that Flash Flood roster, if I'm not mistaken. That's extra risk I don't want to take on. I'm taking Austin.
Look, Austin beats San Jose 25-15. And then in the second game of back-to-back, San Jose almost beats Dallas. 15-14 was the final score of that game. Yeah, you've convinced me, Keith. Let's take Austin. I don't love this line either way, but they've been the better team. Let's just look at the results on the field. Let's look at the Dallas injuries, and let's just call it like it is. Austin has proven to this point that they are the better team. They looked better last week. They've looked better for weeks and weeks. So let's stop trying to make Dallas being good be a thing.
One last piece of evidence for you, Charlie. Every game that these two teams have played against each other has been decided by a single point. So why not take the team that's plus 1.5?
Give me the points. Give me the points. Yeah. You're right, Keith. I like it. Final game this weekend, the only game happening out in the Central Division. It's Chicago at Detroit. Chicago 10.5-point favorites at the Detroit Mechanics. Keith, your thoughts?
There's a theme here, Charlie. We already talked about how good Machine could look. Would I take Detroit to finally break the streak? Is this the streak breaking weekend? I don't think so. But you know what? Detroit's covered for 2 weeks in a row. Ever since DraftKings came out with lines, Detroit's been a cover machine. A streak of 2. They're building their own streak, a new streak. I can't believe I'm going to say it, but I think I got to take the points with Detroit here.
I think it's actually maybe one of my best bets this week. I like Detroit here a lot. I think it's a good spot. Chicago's pretty much locked it up. They just need to win. They don't need to win with convincing. They're not going to have a full strength roster. And, Detroit is honestly, this is a spot where I think Detroit has a chance. I literally think that.
I don't think you can bet the money line on this game, but if you could, would you?
Give me the 10.5. I think the lines, the lines moved a little. I think it was it 13.5 last week against Minnesota?
It was.
Or against Madison. They easily covered that. I think the final tally was 8.
Yes.
Certainly I won't be shocked if Chicago goes in and blows them out huge by 15 or something. But, Detroit's gotten a little bit better progressively over the course of the season. And this is just obviously a terrible spot for Chicago. They have nothing to play for. They're going to be missing people. 10 is huge, right? That's a ton of points, even for Detroit. Give me Detroit. Give me the points.
If you could, would you parlay a Detroit win in here?
No.
Would you throw a Detroit win in a parlay? Come on.
No.
A little game theory here. I think the Stall 7 guys are going to pick Detroit, so maybe that means we should pick Chicago. But we're also leading, so we shouldn't take any more risk, right? So
yeah, we went 2-1 last week. By the way, we took Madison +3. They were inside the number most of the game, and then blew it late, and Chicago ended up winning by 5. Austin did though cover against San Jose easily, and DC easily covering the 3.5. What a ridiculous number that was! I think a lot of people made a lot of money on that one.
We did the bets are going to be fun to track. All of us went 2-1 in our best bets. I felt really good about that Indy under, and then it turned out to be really windy, so crushed there too.
Yeah, well, you check out our new Keith and I both contribute to our new sports betting column, Bets Perspective. It's nice to say out loud. So those are our AUDL picks this week. Looking forward to US Open action. Again, you can follow along all weekend. We'll be streaming games Saturday, Sunday, and Monday from US Open and YCC. You can follow along at ultiworld.com/live. The live games are free to watch, so enjoy. If you want to watch the archives, got to be a subscriber, and we hope you become a subscriber to check out our subscriber bonus segments on all of our podcasts, including right here on Deep Look. Keith, I'm going to let you tell us right now, what are we going to be discussing in our subscriber bonus segment?
Charlie, we had Tom Crawford on the show last week for a really great interview. If you haven't checked it out, you should. But there were a couple of responses around the internet to some of the things Tom Crawford, the now extended CEO of USA Ultimate, had to say about his future tenure there. So let's talk. I want to get into it a little bit, see what the people are saying, and get your thoughts on it.
All right. Well, we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about maybe some ideas for USAU and how cooperation might look with other disc orgs.
Ooh, I like that.
So join us for that. You can become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at ultiworld.com/subscribe. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Keith, I'm Charlie saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look. Enjoy the US Open, everybody.